Awesome. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Mari. I'm the product manager at Hypernode. We've got something very special to share with you today. We've been working on this secret project which is something that we've known to be doing for quite some time now. We've been working on this product for quite some time, and a lot of brilliant minds at Hypernode, from product, tech, support, sales, and marketing have gathered together to introduce you state-of-the-art horizontal autoscaling, which solves an actual customer problem. I just wanted to give you a little bit of introduction on how we started building this product. We already, earlier in 2025, we already launched vertical autoscaling. And we received a lot of great feedbacks from you. A lot of people in the call reached out to us and told us about the problems that they have. We tried to come by a better iteration this time where actually solves the problem, hopefully. And my colleagues, Timon and Owen, are going to be here to walk you through the product how-tos. So today, Timon is going to start talking about horizontal autoscaling. He's going to walk you through an actual live demo where you get to know what autoscaling is, what it does, how you need to set it up, how you can access it from the GUI that we've built for that, from the control panel. And in the end, we're going to be taking questions. Hopefully, we're going to be on time. If we see that there are more questions, we will always be approachable via email or our support team via tickets to address your concerns. So before we get to Timon and he tells you about all the good stuff, I'd like to introduce the problem statement here. So the challenge that we had, still people coming, this is really amazing. The challenge that we had we have actually with e-commerce is handling traffic peaks when nobody expects them. Imagine that you're having a beautiful dinner with your family, and I'm sure this has happened to a lot of you, having a beautiful time with your family. I don't know, it's Christmas or it's summer evening, and then all of a sudden you receive a text from the big boss, the big banana, that, hey, something has gone wrong, we need more resources. Then you're like, oh my God, I'm just trying to have my beer and I need to log into my laptop and start working. Autoscaling is actually trying to, it's not only going to increase the conversion rate, make your website more sustainable and durable, but it's actually going to give you the time back that you deserve to spend it however that you like. So the risk that we have within traffic peaks is the lack of scaling that can lead to website crashes and downtime. They've been talking with a lot of you present in this call, where your web shops are losing thousands of euros per hour when there is a traffic surge. The exact same time that you want to make money, things go to hell. We're trying to prevent that. The solution that we have is the horizontal autoscaling, which is a seamless experience for your customers also for your web shop to handle traffic. It's got zero downtime, which actually helps your orders to be captured successfully. What is it that we're building? We're going to be actually talking about scaling out, where we actually add more machines to the resource pool that you already have with Hypernode. Imagine like you're driving in a highway, suddenly there's a lot of traffic, and that has been going on for quite some time on A2 these days. I'm traveling to the office via A2, and a lot of traffic is there. I'm always thinking to myself, that would be so neat if we could just add one more lane, and if we didn't need them, we just take them out. So that's what autoscaling does for you. To handle more traffic, by adding lanes and removing them when you just don't need them. Why? Because it needs to be also financially feasible. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Timon to talk about the key criteria of enabling autoscaling.
Yeah, thank you, Madi. Great introduction. So yeah, I think you explained pretty well what horizontal autoscaling is. So basically what we do is, based on your load, we add machines to your resource pool. And when the load decreases, we gradually also remove the extra machines. And in that way, you can scale up without having to put the server offline for it to be resized. And that makes it seamless because nothing really changes. Your Hypernode is still handling traffic, but now instead of sending the request to a local PHP FPM service, it's being sent to a different server. And on the front end, you don't really notice anything because you have Varnish enabled, right? So yeah, so to make this solution available to all our customers, we had to set some key criteria to make it available. We need to set a baseline of requirements to make it available. This is because if we don't, then there's too much variation in how we can do horizontal autoscaling. Because there are so many ways to deploy your applications. It's simply just too difficult to support all these edge cases, right? So that's why we set some key criteria. So one of let's go through them quickly. The first one, of course, is the operating system. We made the Debian Bookworm, Debian 12 operating system available last year in April. A lot of customers have been migrating, but not everyone has so far. I really advise to do the upgrade. It's actually an upgrade. Aside from all the security benefits that you get, there's also a lot of extra tools, extra solutions, extra software, extra configuration available to do e-commerce even better, right? So, and also horizontal autoscaling will be available on this operating system. So that's one requirement. Varnish, well, I think this one is pretty obvious, but this is also a best practice. But by utilizing Varnish, you make sure that you make sure that the page cache is being handled on the load balancer side instead of by each application. So when you are scaling up or scaling down, Varnish is still serving the same pages from the cache as if nothing is happening. This makes the experience really good. It makes it seamless, and yeah, it's a really nice way of combining everything together. But yeah, that's also why we said Varnish is going to be a requirement. Yeah, and a lot of good web shop applications are using it, especially in the Magento 2 space. We see that almost everyone is using it. And if you don't, we advise to use it. It's really good. Yeah, then there's Redis. Well, this might be obvious, but also it might not be obvious. Like Redis can also be very performant on a local file system, or perhaps you have a different way of setting up your cache. But we need to have one standard way of making sure that your cache keys and your session keys are available in a centralized way. So yeah, when you're using files for cache or files for sessions, that's obviously not going to work. So we opted to say Redis is a requirement for caching and for sessions. And also for sessions, we say that you need to have the persistent Redis instance enabled. That's because this instance is really optimized for Redis sessions. You have a different way of how keys are being removed from the cache when they expire or when the cache is getting a little bit full. So that's really useful for sessions. And also, we make sure that we back up your sessions as well. So when you restart this instance, your sessions are still there. So yeah, that's one other requirement. Remote storage. Well, we need to have a way that files and assets and what have you are persisted when you are scaling up, scaling down, and each server that's running your application needs to be able to reach those assets and need to be able to serve those assets. So yeah, that's why we set remote storage as a requirement. This must be configured with Hypernode Object Storage, which is a product we are hopefully announcing soon as well. And until then, we advise to go for something like AWS S3 or a different S3 compatible remote storage backend for Magento 2. Yeah, MySQL 5.7 or higher. Most of our customers are already running on this version, but we wanted to be a bit explicit about this. With MySQL 5.7, there's a really good TLS negotiation system available, which we make use of. So that's why we set the standard. And even for Magento 2, latest Magento 2 versions, 8 is the requirement. And this year as well, it's going to be 8.4, I think. So yeah, I don't think that's really going to be a problem for anyone. We also set a standard for a requirement for the Magento version. That's Magento 2.4.7 or higher. We just need to set some kind of version baseline to make sure there's no surprises there. And for now, we have also set supervisor and podman services or processes will not be allowed. This is because we need to fine-tune this experience when you do have this, when you do make use of this. So if you do have to use this, please be patient while we roll out a solution to also support this. So now I'm going to share what we have in the control panel. So let's see. Need to pick the correct tab. Yeah. So this is what you are going to see when we make this available, and when you go to the Autoscaling tab and click Horizontal Autoscaling, you're going to end up on this page. If you have used vertical autoscaling, this view is probably known to you. You can configure the CPU threshold and say like, okay, it needs to be at least just this duration and only between this time period or any time. So I think that's all pretty common. But now we have some applications check as well, and also we check some things on the Hypernode, and everything is passing here. So that basically means that you can use horizontal autoscaling on this page. And also, yeah, it is already enabled on this page. You can see that there's 2 extra servers running on this for this Hypernode. It has been scaled up 2 times already, and the current CPU load is 25.4%. And this is basically distributed across all the servers. So this is the tricky part about doing live demos. Something is not showing up, but as you saw a little bit ago, these checks for this application were showing up. But I'll show it a little bit later. What you can expect in this on this step. But yeah, everything is passing here, and we have it enabled, and you can see like the real-time data. This plan has 5 CPUs, and the actual load is 1.3. There's 2 servers, and it has been scaled up twice. And when I go to a different Hypernode, which doesn't support it, you can see a little bit more. So this one is doing pretty good. Almost met all the eligibility checks or all the requirements. But one of them is that the varnish is running, and it has been configured, but it's missing the WireGuard IP range that we use for horizontal autoscaling in the ACL that you use for purging. So we have some documentation linking to that. You can go there and apply your fix, load your new VCL in. Then you can reload it and see if it has been improved. And then finally, when everything is good, then you can go to the next one. Yeah, we also show all the all kinds of applications on this Hypernode. So you can see there's 3 shopware applications installed here. There's a Laravel application installed and 2 Magento 2 applications. We show them all, even though if we don't support each one of them, like for example, shopware ones we don't support, and the Laravel one we don't support for horizontal autoscaling. But we want to make it upfront. We want to tell you upfront, like, hey, you have this application on your Hypernode, but it's not supported. So if you want to have this, if you want to enable horizontal autoscaling, please don't enable it, because it's going to break your application. Because we can't take that into account because we don't support it right now. Doesn't mean we aren't going to support it ever, but right now we are supporting Magento 2 with the requirements that we discussed earlier. So yeah, you can basically see all the checks that are being ran for this Magento 2 application. You can see that remote storage module is enabled, database storage is disabled, but you can see that remote storage hasn't been configured. So that's one thing to do. It detected, for example, that OpenSearch is being used, but the host name and the port are configured incorrectly. So probably localhost is configured for OpenSearch, but it needs to be a host name for, well, a dynamic host name, because when you autoscale, you need to have a host name configured that's going to resolve to a different IP address. So in this case, localhost will not work, because localhost is always localhost, right? So you need to have some different host name. The same thing goes for RabbitMQ and for MySQL and stuff like that. But when we run into that, we will let you know about this. But in this case, we only detected this for OpenSearch, or well, let's say Elasticsearch in this case. Redis sessions is also not configured correctly. So probably file-based sessions are configured right now for this application. So it's all pretty simple, but some of them aren't. Like a Magento update, that's not very trivial, right? So you might need to plan some upgrades first before you can start using this. The same thing goes for a remote storage. While it is pretty simple to roll this out, you still need to plan this accordingly. Things like Redis sessions or OpenSearch hostname are pretty easy to configure right away. So these are quite light on the configuration. But some of them you need to plan. You need to make some plans to roll this out. If you manage to get all these checks passing and all the applications that you want to run on your Hypernode, so it could be that you have some old application laying around that you don't really use anymore on your Hypernode, that you don't want to throw it away, then you don't need to select it. For example, let's say this is such a case with this application. I don't need to select it, so I don't really care about this application not working when we scale up or scale down, right? So you can ignore this one, so you can deselect it. So when you have all your applications that you want to have supported for horizontal autoscaling, when all of them are succeeding, then you can go and enable it and save your configuration. So that's basically what's happening right here. So I showed this Hypernode earlier, and it has 2 servers being used. And I wanted to show a little bit about what's going on there. So let's see. Going to present something else. It's going to be this one. So this is my Hypernode. We have horizontal autoscaling enabled, and it has also been scaled up. So I can actually run this command, Hypernode cluster info, and you can see that you can see the normal Hypernode, or this Hypernode right now. You can see the normal roles being applied, but also it has a load balancer role. Load balancer means that it has HA proxy configured, and it's balancing loads to certain backends. The backends can be itself, or it can be different Hypernodes that it's scaled up to, right? So it also has 2 Hypernodes that have been used for scaling up. And I can also run this command to see what is going on there. So you can actually see that there's a front end from HA proxy, and 74 requests are coming in, and they are being balanced between these servers. Also, when I run htop, you can see that it is handling a lot of traffic, but it's not really PHP FPM. It's just MySQL that's doing all the heavy lifting on this Hypernode. But actually, when I run live FPM, you can see that there's a lot of traffic being handled on multiple servers. You can see this suffix. We kind of cut it off because the name is quite long, all combined. So we truncate it a little bit. You can see that there's multiple Hypernodes right here handling the load here. So PHP FPM is not running right here. It's running on different Hypernodes. So yeah, you can still run live FPM to see what's happening right here, but you can also still run live recs and see what's happening here. Right now, I'm running some load using HTTP perf to well simulate some load right here, right? But yeah, that's all what's happening here, and I wanted to show that for a little bit. So, and if the load, so right now we are causing some loads, and we have two Hypernodes running for this two horizontal autoscaling Hypernodes running to add resources. But if that's not enough, we will spin up a 3rd one, and if that's not enough, we'll spin up a 4th one, etc. So we will keep on going until you have enough capacity for your Hypernode. Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to share for today. And I'm really curious about your questions, about your input. So let's transition to that. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you so much, Simon, for a great live demo. It went really well. It doesn't usually happen to even big tech companies, right? But it went really good. That shows preparation and how flawless you guys have been working. I'm really thankful. Any questions? So we're going to be starting taking the questions in the chat, and you can just raise your hand up or just turn on your microphone and then shoot. So Timon, Owen, how does it define enough Hypernodes? Number of requests waiting or time taken to serve?
Yeah, I'll take the first 2. So enough Hypernodes, it's looking at the CPU load, because that's basically the only real metric that we can properly take into account of if your server is well, needy of more CPU resources. We also discussed scaling up memory, for example, but this was quite tricky, and we saw that most of the scaling cases that customers are looking for comes down to just more CPU. Well, memory is not really the big issue. Also, one thing that I've got to showcase in the demo is that we don't scale up with the same plan that you are currently on. So we always try to find the next biggest plan for your current plan, and that's what we use to add resources to your Hypernode. So let's say you're on a Falcon M for your Hypernode, and you have horizontal autoscaling enabled. Then the Hypernodes that will be added, those are the Falcon L flavors. If you're on Falcon L, we will be adding Falcon XL servers, etc. So a lot of questions to go through. So I was wondering, is it also possible to use Fastly instead of Varnish? I think so. We haven't added support for it right now, but I think it makes a lot of sense to add this at some point. Yeah. Why can't we not use supervisor anymore? Couldn't you just put supervisor only on the first Hypernode, the original one, or was there any other reason? Yeah, so good question. So it's completely fine to use supervisor, nothing wrong with that. But we found out that we needed to add something to the control panel advising the user who wants to enable horizontal autoscaling, like, hey, we see that you're using supervisor, or we see that you're using Podman to run some extra services. That's completely fine. But we want to make them aware that we won't be scaling those services up, right? So if you're running some extra database in a container, or a different service using supervisor just to support your main Hypernode, that's completely fine. Or when you're using queue consumers and you're configuring them in using supervisor, that's completely fine. But we need to still need to implement something that basically tells the customer, like, hey, you can enable it, but please assess your supervisor processes, your Podman processes, that it's okay if they won't be scaled up. Because if they would need to be scaled up, then don't enable it, right? This is something that needs to be assessed manually. It's very difficult for us to do this for you, right? Yeah, you're welcome. Where are the PHP files stored, and what will happen when we do a deployment? Great question. So I think that's also something that we will be adding more support for. Right now, you can't do deployments. So we do have a file stored somewhere. This will be documented. It's not in my head right now, but we do store a file somewhere so that you can take this into account with your deployments to not deploy when this file exists. So this basically means you're scaled up, don't deploy. That's what we support right now. But in the future, it would be best if you can take this into account. Like, hey, we're scaled up, so we need to deploy the application to the multiple servers, right? So this makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot of things to take into account there. So that's why we don't support it right now. It basically means that you need to either not deploy or make sure that you need to make sure that you take this into account when you are deploying. So check if it's scaled up right now and abort. Yeah. Thank you, Martijn. Great. Yeah. So abort when it's scaled up. So yeah, basically also when we scale up, we make a snapshot of your Hypernode data disk. That's basically what we attach to the new Hypernode, so that it's always fresh based on what's currently being deployed. That's basically where the PHP files come from. Also, I do see a future where you're using Hypernode deploy, for example, and perhaps you upload some manifest to Hypernode, so we don't need to make snapshots, but we can just pull it out of our database to get the application. Yeah, you're welcome. In order to use horizontal autoscaling, we need to have a minimum of 2 Hypernodes at any given time, or 1 for DB and 1 for web, and then web will scale up. No, 1 Hypernode, just 1. So basically, when you enable horizontal autoscaling for your Hypernode, it will kind of be upgraded to become a hybrid load balancer. So initially, when you enable it, and when we upgrade it, it is a load balancer, but it's handling its own load. So it's a load balancer referring to itself. But as soon as you scale up, then it starts referring to different web servers. So all the same services like MySQL, Redis, Elasticsearch are still running on your Hypernode. Right now, but we are planning to add this in a later iteration. But right now, we don't support having a separate database Hypernode, so that you have your normal Hypernode, but you don't run MySQL there. You run MySQL on a different Hypernode. We have plenty of customers who are using that setup to, well, offload the resources from their web server. But it makes a lot of sense to add support for that setup as well, to make sure that your web server is having enough capacity to handle all the traffic. So that's one on the radar as well. I hope this one answers your question. So just 1 Hypernode for a traditional use case. How is it built? Can you put time or size limits in place? That's a good question. I do have a lot of things in my head, but I think it would be best if Mari would answer this one.
Of course. So affordability is also what we're going after. That's why you're going to be, once autoscaling is activated, you're going to be paying a small amount for subscription, which is around €25 per month. There's a 1 month cancellation notice for unsubscribing as well. And you also pay as you go, which is also calculated based on per hour, which is very affordable as well. On top of my head, I cannot remember what are the prices per hour, but it's available within the documentation and also horizontal autoscaling landing page as well. However, for everybody that is attending the call today, as a token of appreciation, I'd like to open the parenthesis here and tell you that I hope we all do appreciate what we're doing here. We are moving the industry needle here, right? So, and we cannot do that alone at Hypernode. We need your feedback, and we need you to actually enable it and get back to us with the improvements that we can possibly offer for a better second iteration. So, as a token of appreciation, our sales and marketing team have provided you with a fascinating discount, which I think you all will be getting the voucher right after the call or within the upcoming days. So it's going to be pretty affordable. Do you want to? Can you put a time or size limits in place? Well, of course you can put on. Of course, there's always the threshold that you can set. So once the threshold passes, booting up the second node will start. Also, you can within the front end, something that we didn't have for vertical autoscaling, but we have it right now for horizontal autoscaling. We heard you, we listened to you, and now you can actually put a time frame within the control panel, but just 2 clicks, selecting start date and an end date. How amazing is that? To actually avoid extra costs. Owen?
Yeah, just following on what you said, Matty, I think it's important just to remind everybody that when you set this up for the first time, that's the only time you're doing any setup. So you can turn this on and just leave it on. And most of the time, if you're on the right plan, you're probably not going to be scaling. It's only when you need it. So you can just turn it on, never think about it again. And then in the background, it will scale up during those irregular times when you have high peak, and it will go back down to the original Hypernode. And you will only be charged for that amount when it's being used. So you don't need to maybe like alternative products, or even a little bit like vertical autoscaling sometimes, where you need to schedule things, you need to think about things in advance. You do this one time, you always leave it on, and it would only use it when you need it.
Thank you, Owen. Indeed, everything sounds better in Owen's our beautiful Irish accent. Any other questions? So there's another one from Fabian Timon or Owen. Are server upgrades still a good thing to do with a consistent higher load, or is that also fully covered by horizontal autoscaling? Great question.
Yeah, so I think your question is if like having, so probably you are referring to do regular X grades for your customers based on them having a sale or something or stuff like that. So I think you do have to do this less often, because there's more capacity being added when you enable horizontal autoscaling. But what is good to take into account here is that your original Hypernode, let's say the original Hypernode that you enable horizontal autoscaling for is still handling some sort of traffic, right? So, we can see that it's mostly heavy on stuff like MySQL, Redis. So you need to take into account that even when you have a lot of load and you're offloading a lot of traffic to extra web servers, you still need to make sure that your original Hypernode is able to handle that traffic. Like it needs to do MySQL queries, it needs to do Redis queries and stuff like that. So it needs to be able to do that. So that's something to take into account with this solution. So you need to have some proper base plan for the amount of traffic that you pull in. I hope that this answers your question.
I just wanted to add that on X-Grade and autoscaling, it's not either or. They both could complement each other. With X-Grade, we all, when I say we, I mean Hypernode and all our partners, our tier partners, we spend a lot of time planning and then doing the X-Grade, right? Before that and then after that to upgrade and then downgrade. And then what if there's not enough time then? What if it's just a reaction to a news jump? We haven't had plans for that, right? So things could go so wrong and south in a limited time. We're probably planning for X-Grade might not be the solution here. So a faster, more agile, instant reaction to traffic spikes is where we need to use. And we don't know when that happens, because we might not have predicted that. It could happen just today, right after the call, right? So yeah. So I just wanted to sum up that X-Grades and autoscaling could really complement each other for increase in conversion rate and better sales by enhancing the performance. We have also another one from Lobosh. I hope I am pronouncing the name correctly. How long does it take to scale up the servers on average?
I think it's about 10 minutes. We do have to say we haven't done a lot of optimizations so far. So we are still looking into how we can get this time down a bit more. But yeah, right now you can take into account like in the matter of 10 minutes. It's because we do have to spin up cloud resources. We need to make those available, and then do some configuration management. So that's basically why. We are looking into using something we call the spare node pool, which we also use for Hypernode Brancher, which is where we have some reserve pool available with certain virtual machines, certain disks, certain IP addresses, and then we can use them at an instant, and then we can make some very small changes to the configuration management, and then it's available much faster. So we are looking into things like that still, but right now the answer is 10 minutes. You have to say, if it's really a spike, then it's not really gonna matter much. But if you actually have some serious traffic, then 10 minutes is not really going to be a very big difference. But we also have had some ideas of, for example, saying like, okay, we are expecting some extra traffic for tonight. It would be pretty cool that you could say like, okay, make sure we already have 4 extra instances before the peak starts, right? So we also have ideas like that. I think it would make sense to add this at some point. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff available with horizontal autoscaling, like how you can play with adding resources to your pool. So I hope this answers your question.
I think it's important to mention as well. So this is where the thresholds are very, very useful, because we can start that scaling process well before the time where it's absolutely critical. And we scale with multiple nodes if the calculation thinks that you'll need X amount of nodes to serve your current traffic, and then some. So those nodes are provisioned in parallel. So for most people, you almost will never notice it. You'll just see the load come down, and the provision of the new nodes will happen before it gets to a time where you might notice any performance issues on your website. And as Matty said at the start of the call, that's what the aim of horizontal autoscaling has been. It's been zero downtime. So when we switch on those additional nodes to HA proxy config, you will not notice any downtime. It will be seamless.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Timon. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Bert is asking, for hotfixes, can you manually scale down?
Technically, yes, but we don't have an API endpoint or tool available for this right now. But I think it's a really good question, and I think it should be possible to do this.
And we also, I think I missed a question. Apologies for that. John is asking,
yeah.
Does Xcrate allow for configuration changes to services? Example, if you're going to scale up MySQL, we will need to allow more connections and have more memory allocated. Very good question.
Yeah. So we already do this based on the plan that you Xcrate to. We configure each service to have the right amount of resources. So yeah, definitely. So good questions coming in. What does it do with crawl-based traffic /bots? Yeah, we also take that one into account. So that's a tricky one too. So you need to play either with the thresholds or play with the time that horizontal autoscaling is enabled. For example, if you want to make sure that the Google bot running at night pulls in a lot of resources for your horizontal autoscaling, perhaps you should not enable horizontal autoscaling for during the night. So that's also possible in the control panel, where you can say only do horizontal autoscaling between, for example, 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., for example.
Amazing. We are 1 minute over time, and if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody to join us. I'd like to thank Timon, Owen, and everybody else at Hypernode team to work around the clock tirelessly to prepare this. Thanks to our beautiful marketing team for this effort. We should do this more often. This was fun.
Yeah, it's really good, and great questions too. Really love it.
Hey, don't forget, get the goodies in your emails pretty soon. Activate it. Get back to us. You always have support. You always have me on LinkedIn as well. You always have user voice to let us know about your inquiries, and we will be more than happy to answer them. Somebody raised a hand. Bert, was that you? All right, cool. Hey, have a lovely evening, and I guess I see you guys within the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye.